Good morning, Brookfield Zoo fans and members, and welcome to this edition of Bringing the Zoo to You. My name's Tim Sullivan. I'll be hosting this particular episode, and if some of you were with us last Wednesday, we were at Tropic World, but we were over in South America, and now today we're in Africa section. This is actually the oldest section, so to speak, because it opened in the earliest time back in 1982. Again, this whole habitat is one of my favorites because there's just so much going on. It was one of the largest indoor zoo habitats back in the day, and still is an amazing facility that allows so much opportunity for animals to behave and for guests to come and experience and enjoy all that's going on here. Africa is broken up into two sections, and I'm standing literally on a bridge between the two sections. This allows our guests to look over to my right, which is the main Africa section, and this hosts a couple of different species of primates, monkeys. And again, monkeys have tails, apes don't, if you want to know a quick difference between the two. Over here we have Schmidt's red-tailed guenons, which are out today since we're closed, but at other times we'll have Allen's swamp monkeys here, as well as colobus here, Angolan colobus. Primates, of course, are mostly arboreal species. The red-tailed guenons are, of course, get their name from that beautiful red tail. You can see them up there, hopefully. They'll be bouncing around, so Lynette's gonna have her work cut out for her today, trying to find the animals in this huge habitat. But there's one on the left here coming up. And you can see that red fur on their tail, which is just awesome. This species also has a really bright white or yellow nose that they're known for, and those white cheeks are really cute, very fuzzy. They eat mostly fruit in the wild, and of course they have to forage for that fruit in the trees in other areas, but when fruit isn't around, they'll eat leaves and gum from the tree as well. Obviously, when you live in the trees, you have to be pretty agile, and all these species are. We have 6 guenons here at the zoo, and to keep them active and to keep them busy, as we talked about last week, we use environmental enrichment. The habitat itself is really wonderful. It has lots of facilities and things that are really important to maintain the behavior and health of our species here. But then we add things to the habitat to bring out special behaviors from the animal. As we talked about last week, we have things on the habitat that really help us out. If you want to look down here, I've got a pointer today to hopefully point it out. We've added these little pouches down here that are all over the bases of the trees that allow us to put food in there in the morning. The animal care staff do that, and they'll give them surprises, all parts of their diet. And as the animals come out, they can forage across this large habitat to find food. Sometimes they go in there and they see something they don't like, kind of like your Easter basket. You start with the good candy first and you work your way up to the less preferred. In their diet, like us, they have less preferred food items and more preferred food items. So you might have a guenon that's running around and just grabbing the good stuff first. They want to find that. That's their kind of Easter egg hunt for them. And then they'll come back later and eat some of the less preferred things. All of them are valuable and important to their diet. Likewise, in that same general area, you can see some shelving that we put in here. It looks like fungus that we put on the trees. This allows the animals to kind of reside in different levels of our habitat. Being an arboreal species, you'll notice that some primate species will actually kind of find themselves in different areas. We talked about last week where the spider monkeys tend to be up in the higher parts of the canopy, and the squirrel monkeys were in the middle area. And so they tend to find themselves there and create territories. Likewise, we talked last week about timed feeders. Now, of course, those pouches that we have, once they're loaded and the animals have cleaned them out, there's not anything left in them, and we don't typically have the keepers go out with the animals. So we have added timed feeders here that allow us to extend the time in which that foraging can continue for the animals. If you look up into the trees here, knowing that both these species are arboreal, we've got these little things that look like wasp nests. Can you see my little pointer there? Mm-hmm. We talked about this last week about trying to get that food up higher in the canopy, and we talked about using pulley systems. And as a matter of fact, those 2 wasp nests are actually made out of aluminum by our exhibits department here. They did a fantastic job helping them blend in. And they're attached to pulleys. And so in the morning, the animal care staff can crank the wasp nest down, they open it up, and there are tubes inside of that where they can load up vegetation or part of the vegetable diet of the animal. And then they load it up, and then there's a timer in there that slowly ticks off and drops the food from the top of the wasp nest to the bottom of the wasp nest. You can see the hole down in the bottom there. So this allows us to extend that foraging time, and of course allow to give food for our animals that are higher up in the trees where they would normally get it. So this is really helpful in maintaining that really strong and long-term foraging behavior that all primates have that forage for their food. Let's look down a little bit lower there. You can see there's a pile of bark down here. Can everybody see that?
Oh, I was in the wrong spot.
Oh, there we go, right here. So we call those forage piles. And what that is basically a natural substrate that we put down, and then within that substrate we can put a type of food item where the animal can forage. There are a lot of animals that forage on the forest floor, and these animals can move up and down from the tops of the trees down to the ground to look for food, and that's just another place for them to do that. So they have to use their hands, their eyes, their sense of smell to find that food. Again, extending the foraging time and bringing out all this natural, healthy behavior that's great for their well-being. Let's move down here a little bit across the bridge. I can show you a really cool feeder that we have up higher in the exhibit. And we've got a couple of our guenons here looking at us. We're very interesting to them. They like watching what we're doing as well. If you look up high, Lynette, can you see my laser pointer up there?
Yep.
That is a camouflage that's hiding a belt feeder that, again, the animal care staff will put food on that. It can last up to 12 hours and deposit food through that chute. It comes down and hits the habitat and then spreads out. Again, having the animals work for their food, use their sense of smell, their eyesight, and then to try and find some of that food when it falls into crevices. They can use all that agility and that dexterity to get that food and consume it. The guenons here are pretty cool. They have really large cheek pouches. In fact, their cheek pouches can hold as much food as their stomach can. And this is really important when you're out there foraging with big groups of animals that guenons tend to go with, because your neighbor might want your food. And so you want to maybe fill up those cheek sacs as much as you can with food, and then go someplace a little bit safer where you can enjoy them all by yourself and not have a chance of them being stolen by your buddy that's also looking for a free meal. These animals, again, are really helpful to the environment. They all have their role, and you can see how social they are. Again, they'll spend all their time moving back and forth, and you're actually seeing some really cool behavior by our guenons. You see their heads kind of bouncing around. Sometimes they'll stick their tongue out and lick. These are all display behaviors, and that's how they maintain their social hierarchy and say, I'm a tough monkey, and look at me because I can move my head real funny and make my tongue move, or move my head, drop my head back and forth. All ways that these animals socialize. On top of body positioning and how they hold themselves, they have different types of vocalizations they use, both to contact the members of their family or their troop, or to tell them, hey, I want to be alone and go away for a little bit, or come and see me because I'm friendly and I want to play right now. So we want to make sure we can pull all that behavior out of the animals because our guests get to enjoy that. This is what monkeys do, and every species has different behaviors that are important to them. But in general, the more behavior we can have these animals express here at the zoo, that we help increase their welfare. So our animal care staff, our managers, are always looking for ways to come up with new enrichment items to help bring more behavior out of the animal. So looks like our guenons are nice and calm there. They're sitting watching us. How about we go over some apes? The beautiful part about this part of Africa and the exhibit is we just have to swing around over here to our gorilla exhibit.
Other side of the bridge.
Yeah, that's right. So let's go find out where they're at. We've got a couple down here, Lynette. These are our western lowland gorillas, and we have 8 gorillas here. At Come Across, we actually have 4 generations of gorillas, if you can believe that. Our oldest are going to be 41, which is Jojo. His birthday is coming up soon. And then our youngest you're seeing right there, which is Zachary. And all ages in between. And all these animals are somewhat related depending on when they came here. The western lowland gorilla is part of a species survival plan. And so we do work with other zoological institutions to make sure that we create the best possible population to ensure genetic diversity and the long-term sustainability of this particular species and all species that are in that program. Western lowland gorillas are just a fascinating species. They're not the largest of the gorilla species. They live in lower areas. The females can weigh between 200 up to 200 pounds, 225 pounds. The males, on the other hand, can be much larger. They can get up to 425 pounds. So there's that, what we call sexual dimorphism, where there's a difference between the two genders. This habitat is really cool. It gives them lots of vertical space to come up to on our, what we call Gorilla Mountain, but all sorts of room to move. Right now our water system's not on, and that is one of the features of the habitat. Gorillas don't typically swim, most primates don't, but the water becomes a feature that they can go in and drink from. The water is potable, and as well as just give them a chance to hear the sounds that creates. In this habitat, we also do lots of foraging as well. This is a foraging species, and so we have a number of different ways to encourage that behavior, which makes up a great majority of their day. We have the keepers or animal care specialists in the morning also set up, there's pockets around this habitat as well that they can load up and afford the gorillas a chance to search for that food. And we also have time feeders for this as well, and I can maybe show you a couple of those right now. If you want to look up in the top area there, I'm going to shine it on the wall first. And then there's one belt feeder up there. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, that's one of 3 belt feeders we have here that are around the perimeter of the habitat. And they will, throughout the day and at various times, deposit food and diet items into the habitat. And oftentimes the gorillas can't see that happening, and so they have to forage. They'll walk around the habitat looking for food. We notice a lot of times the little kids, like Nora and Zachary and Allie, will be out there and they're very in tune. They can actually hear sometimes the food dropping, and they kind of take off. And the adults know that, and so they watch the kids very closely to see, hey, if you guys see something, let us know, and we'll go out and find it with you. Those 3 feeders that we installed were actually part of a larger research project we did here with our behavioral research team. Dr. Lance Miller and his colleagues wanted to study the effects of things like enrichment on affecting the animal's behavior. One of our goals was to encourage more foraging time for the animals. And as a result of putting in those 3 belt feeders alone, we increased their foraging behavior by about 50%, which is wow, super significant. That article was published in a peer-reviewed journal, and really got a lot of calls from other zoos trying to learn about the benefits and how to use these types of feeding devices to encourage behavior in other animals around the world. In addition to those 3 feeders that we have, the belt feeders, there's been a lot of Zoom activity about our kind of overhead feeder that we have. I don't know if you can see it from here. Let's move over to the right, because I think there's a couple of gorillas over here we might be able to see as well that are hanging out. Look up top there, and I'll use my little pointer again. Can you see this area right here? We have a feeder, 2 feeders that feed that port that are timed and can drop food down on the mountain here, which again draws the animals up to the mountain. And then a large foraging chute up there where we can drop large things like whole heads of lettuce or other vegetation, again drawing out more behavior and making sure that the animals are active and busy throughout the day. So this habitat is really cool. We've spent a lot of time with enrichment here over the times, and some of the enrichment is actually built in. If you want to look down to the right here, Lynette, we have a little foraging stump here, and you'll notice these little holes in this little stump and little areas on all 3 sides here. That is an opportunity to put, again, more diet items in there. And the nice thing about that one, it allows and kind of encourages tool use. And actually, if you look down here, you might see a little stick. And my feeling is that stick was used to get food, sometimes liquid, sometimes things like peanut butter, out of those holes. And again, we've noticed that throughout our troop here, that the younger animals will learn from the adults how to use tools and actually how to make tools. And a lot of apes show that out in the wild as well. And so it's a great way for them for us to encourage that mental activity of both trading tools and learning how to use them, but also the physical activity and challenge of finding and getting their food.
They're following us.
They are following us again. So we're seeing them look around here. And if you're wondering what this kind of white, kind of fluffy material is, it's called wood wool. It's basically just shavings of wood, which is great bedding material for animals. We give that for enrichment and as part of their daily care. And it's interesting though, that the material is also an enrichment item for our buffalo weavers that are flying around here. We've got 3 species of birds here, Turaco, a blue-bellied roller, and of course the weavers. And the weavers build these beautiful nests that they actually weave, and that's how they got their name. And I'm not seeing some around here, they might have changed their location, but they use that wood wool as a part of their nesting material, and they'll use it and kind of weave it into these large, I'll call them very large watermelon shape or larger nests that they will basically tie to a tree branch, and it hangs down below. And so not only is this an enrichment item for our gorillas, it also becomes a enrichment item for our weavers, so they can go ahead and build nests, which is a really important part of their natural behavioral repertoire. And so we can find ways where we can, the enrichment we use can help lots of species here on Tropic World. So
she's making herself a little
she
nest
is,
there.
yes, and we do have a little nest there. We do put out kind of hammock materials for our animals. We want to make sure there are softer enrichment items in our habitats that the animals will necessarily go to. And you saw a little bit of social behavior there. Typically, if somebody wants it and they're bigger and stronger, they'll say, hey, this is mine now, and they work it out over time. And you also see lots of behavior like Zachary here, who's a young male, and he just wanted to show us how cool he is and how tough he is. He's going to basically do some displays, and they often do that with our vines and areas here, and it's just so much fun to watch. Our guests really enjoy this area, and this habitat is great for them too, because you're so cool, Zachary. This habitat goes all the way around, so you can actually have a chance to go up to higher altitudes and be able to find the animals and see them performing all sorts of different behavior. So again, this is one of my favorite habitats, and I can spend all day here just watching primate behavior. Do we have any questions that you're getting, Lynette, on?
Yes, we are getting some questions. So somebody wants to know, do the positions of any of the foraging what do you call them?
Devices?
Like boxes,
Yep.
yeah,
Boxes,
devices. Yep. Do they move, or do they put foraging material in one day and maybe another day? How does that work?
Oh, we got some smart folks out there in the audience. Yes, we do. Variability is really important because we also want to mimic what happens in the wild. Because an animal can go forage in one tree one day and there's food there and not the next. And so we can replicate that same experience here at Brookfield Zoo. And that's why you saw those foraging envelopes that we have on the trees and around the habitats. They are so numerous because that affords the animal care staff the opportunity to leave some empty and fill others. And that can change every day. Some of our enrichments are on a schedule. We want to make sure that our enrichment, typically there are categories of enrichment, those that include food, those that might affect the sense of smell or the sense of eyesight or the sense of hearing or the sense of touch. And we spread those out over a calendar. And so throughout the day, the week, the month, and the year, the animal care staff look to make sure that we're drawing out all those behaviors, but doing it in a variable way, as would be required or what happens out in nature. And so we have a very thoughtful process to make sure that whether it's putting food in an envelope or not, that will produce a different behavior in the animal. And if we watch and observe how that change in the environment affects their behavior, we can learn from that and then make adjustments to our enrichment calendar or also our enrichment strategies to make sure that we're always incrementally improving the animal's care.
Since we've been closed, have you added any enrichment into the animals' habitats to kind of, because they usually watch people,
yeah,
and interact with people. So are we doing anything to make up for that lack of interaction?
Well, it's interesting. The interaction with our guest it changes from day to day as more people come in. It's interesting. I actually like to watch that. We see the interaction between the animals and what they respond to. Because when you have 20 or 30,000 people coming in the park every day, and thousands of those coming through Tropic World, the animals change their behavior, but you'll notice that they will actually pick up on some person that they think is interesting, whether it's what they're wearing or how they're acting. And so that is an important part and something that we don't control, but is a variability that's important for these animals. In the absence of those people, and that happens a lot, it happens when the zoo's closed, and that's the majority of the time, usually probably 14 to 16 hours of the day, aren't with our guests, and so they have different behavior. We've seen a lot of that happen in the absence of guests here, but we've also seen other behavior take place. For instance, when I came today, I was much more interesting to them because I was the first person that wasn't an animal care staff to come in here and to visit. And so they watched me, and Zachary was really cool. He wanted to kind of show me all his cool new moves that he had. So yes, from an enrichment standpoint, we've changed a little bit when folks aren't here. Normally during our public hours, we like to make sure that the enrichment we put on the habitat here blends into the habitat. It doesn't isn't brightly colored or doesn't necessarily fit into the habitat that we've created here from the theme of the habitat. And so in the absence of the folks, we've been able to experiment a little bit more, to put in enrichment that may not be natural looking, but we can learn from that. We say, okay, this particular strategy, even though it doesn't look natural, is pulling out natural behavior. And from that information, we can then go ahead and start to develop natural looking alternatives to that so that we can have it on the habitat all the time and not let it compete with the guest's ability to see the animals or the theme of the habitat. So we have used that opportunity to learn more about what our animals like by exploring new options that we hadn't normally tried.
That is really interesting. I love learning all about the enrichments, and it looks like all of our guests do too. We've been getting a lot of questions. So let me just scroll through a couple here.
Sure.
Because to be very honest, I was watching the gorillas and I wasn't watching the questions.
They're being very cute. They're sharing the hammock there, and that's very, very cute.
Is our red-tailed guenon troop, or is that a breeding family?
I'm not sure where we're at. We have done breeding here with all of our primate species, but that can change, and so I'm not as up to date on that. I can certainly get that information. We can maybe post it on later on after it's over.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, but we do intend, either we're kind of advised to breed. Again, these animals are all part of a larger group of that species that are being managed to make sure that they, again, have that high biological diversity, genetic diversity. And so sometimes we're asked to breed animals and sometimes we're not, and we'll find out that answer for you.
Mm-hmm. Somebody else wanted to know if the weavers who build the nests, are those the males?
That is a really good question, and that is way out of my skill set. We can certainly find that out.
I don't know that either, because I know the ones in Habitat Africa, those are the males, but I don't know if it's a different species here, right?
Again, a wonderful question, and again, that's the beauty is there's so much information out there to absorb, and I've tried to absorb as much as I can in 40 years, but there's so much out there. But we'll get that answer for you too, and make sure we post that as well.
That was a great question. Can you say forage on forest floors? See, I can't even do it. Forage on forest floors 10 times faster.
I probably could, but it'll probably be the funniest part of this whole episode because I will mess it up for sure. I love our guests. They're great with these questions and ideas.
Can you remind us again what species are on the other side of the walkway here?
Sure. So we saw the Schmidt's red-tailed guenon. We also have the Allen swamp monkey, which are really cool. They got that name because they're actually pretty good swimmers. They have little webbing between their toes and on their hands, and so that allows them to swim a little better if they need to. And as well as we have the Angolan colobus, which is that beautiful black and white species. It's a herbivore and usually spends its time up high in the canopy as well.
Mm-hmm. Let me scroll back down to the bottom. Oh, someone was asking when we do the Facebook Lives. We're doing them right now on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 11 o'clock.
Yes, and I'll be doing the next 2 Wednesdays. I seem to be the Wednesday host, which I certainly enjoy.
I love listening to these. Let me see if there's any more. Sorry, guys. I should have been paying more attention to the comments and I was.
And again, anything
I
we
was
can't answer
not-
live like this, we'll certainly get the information
Yeah.
with you. We love the interaction. That's what's so great about these Facebook Lives is the ability to interact, hopefully mostly in real time, but other times we just want to make sure you get the right information. We love how inquisitive our guests are, and learning more about our animals and how we work and operate as a zoological institution is really important because our goal here is, again, to create conservation leaders of our guests and help people care for and empathize with the animals. So again, in their daily life, they're going to help us produce a better world by changing their behavior in ways that are going to help wildlife and nature.
And a lot of people are asking when Tropic World is going to reopen, and as far as I know, we're still evaluating that. So
we are, yeah. The state is giving us input on that, as well as it'll be a limited fashion, kind of like we are right now with the swamp being open in the Living Coast and some of our underwater viewing areas. And once we get that all sorted out, keep an eye on czs.org, our website, and we'll keep all the most current information up there because we will be slowly opening up habitats as the state and conditions allow.
Let's see, someone is asking if the two in the hammock are related.
They are. It's hard to pick out who's
No,
who
I don't
there.
have my glasses on. It looks like it's Nora
It's certainly Nora and her mom.
And yeah. Sorry, my glasses were foggy. I had to take them off.
Yeah, so that's cool. And their dad is Jojo.
Yeah, he
and
hasn't
so
made an
he hasn't made an
appearance
appearance either. He's down
probably
hiding
on
out.
the
Yes,
side.
he likes his privacy. Like, he's got his old man cave that he goes down to and takes care of all his business. All right, well, that's it for Tropic World Africa. Again, I really appreciated hosting this, and I hope you enjoyed it and learned a few things about the great care that we provide here at Brookfield Zoo and all the wonderful animals. We look forward to having you back as soon as possible. Please feel free to keep up to date with the website. We like our fans, and so don't be afraid to give a like or whatever it is. I'm not a social media expert, but whatever it is to make sure that you do this because we want to share this with all of our guests and all the people that are interested in Brookfield Zoo. Until next time, and that'll be next Wednesday, have a great day, and it's great to see you. Bye-bye.